Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel once again. Today we have a case that was highly requested. It's from here in Argentina and it's the Pomar family case. For almost a month, this was a mystery that aroused many hypotheses and ended up being a national embarrassment. To understand why, keep watching the video. Here on the side are my social networks, and let's start with the case. This happens in Argentina, Buenos Aires in the year 2009. They are the Pomar family, composed of Fernando Pomar, 40 years old, Gabriela Viagran, 37, and their two daughters, Candelaria and Pilar, 6 and 3 years old respectively. The whole family resided in José Mármol, Buenos Aires. What stands out about this family is that Fernando Pomar was known as a chemist, and at the time of the events he was unemployed. In reality, his profession as a chemist was merely a high school degree signifying his technical training as a chemical technician. But this small detail gave rise to a lot of speculation and hypotheses about what had actually happened. On the 16th of November, Fernando Pomar had a job interview in Pergamino. Here you will see the map to get a rough idea of the location. For this interview, he would travel on November 14th with his entire family. In this place, Pergamino, Gabriela's mother also lived, whom she called the previous day to let her know they would be coming to visit. That is, she was expecting them. They would depart in their red Fiat Duna weekend on Saturday, November 14th, from the suburbs to the edge of the province. Gabriela, for her part, had a son from another marriage who had an exam on the day of the interview, so he couldn't go with the family. With all this planned, they set off to Pergamino on Saturday, November 14th, having informed Gabriela's mother by text message of the time they would arrive. Unfortunately, between their home and Pergamino, the Pomar family disappears. Let's then move on to the events in chronological order. On November 14th, 2009 at 6:30, the Pomar couple leaves their home in José Mármol with their two daughters heading to Pergamino, as I already mentioned, their hometown. The couple planned to return on the 16th at night. Around 7 in the evening, they send a message to a relative telling them when they were going to arrive in Pergamino. This message said, "We are on our way," but as I already mentioned, they never arrived. Around 8, Gabriela has a phone conversation with a friend of hers, a lawyer who was waiting for them to have dinner in Pergamino. During the conversation, Gabriela tells her that they were at the height of Claypole. Meanwhile, Gabriela's father gets a text saying they'd arrive in Pergamino around 10 p.m. When they failed to arrive in Pergamino, the awaiting family reported it to the police. From this point, the search for them begins, and the media discovers their disappearance. On November 19th, supposedly according to the police, the prosecutor denied this fact. Gabriela's cell phone was activated in Quivilcoy. The next day, on November 20th, a memorable image emerges in the media. For many days, being the subject of dramatic speculation. He is seen on a tall camera in Villa Espil, on Route 7, Fernando Pomar, only him with his car. As you can see in the image, he looks agitated according to some people, angry according to others, with his hand out of the window and his mouth open as if shouting or saying something. Some said he was waving to someone, others said he was simply talking to the toll booth operator. As I mentioned, it sparked considerable speculation. On November 23rd, a second image appears on the security cameras of another toll booth on Route 7 near San Andrés de Giles, taken about 20 minutes before the other, in which you can see all 4 family members inside the Fiat Duna. Here, obviously, several of those speculations dissipate since they had started to say that maybe the father was alone in the car, and that the angry face represented some kind of crime he had committed. We'll get more into that in the theories. On November 26, a witness said they saw the whole family strolling calmly through a shopping center in the town of Ameghino, 5 days after the disappearance. But the investigators dismissed this version. Particularly, let's say that if they were in a shopping center, that is in a mall, as we call it here, there would really be security cameras, many more witnesses. These people were being searched for by the 26th day. About 7 days had passed since the search began, so their photos were already in the media. These people were already being searched for, and there were many who recognized the faces of this family. It's hard to believe that only one person saw them in a place as crowded as a mall. On November 28th, the Undersecretary of Investigations of the Ministry of Security, Paul Stark, traveled to Pergamino and interviewed the relatives of the missing, saying that none of the hypotheses they had so far were being ruled out. There were several hypotheses at this point, some that were official and others that were off the record. That is, they were already somewhat far-fetched hypotheses, so they were not taken too much into account. However, they remained a possibility. On November 30th, the head of the Animal Protection Society of Tres Arroyos claimed that the Pomars left their toy poodle with her. The investigations promptly dismissed it. I hadn't told you before, but the toy poodle was with them in the car. They had taken it on the trip. This detail wasn't widely reported by media outlets initially. The dog wasn't talked about much at first. On December 1st, they raided the family's house in Josonsy, Manarmol, for the second time, looking for a firearm that, according to witnesses, Fernando had recently purchased for his security, but they didn't find it. This was part of those hypotheses I was telling you about earlier, based on rumors, in a way, and on the toll booth photo. Buenos Aires Security Minister Carlos Stornelli believed the Pomar case was unrelated to insecurity, favoring the voluntary disappearance hypothesis. On December 4th, they found a burned Fiat Duna Weekend in Moron, but later determined that it was grey and not red like the Pomars. Search operations are ongoing as the prosecutor considers possibilities like accident or kidnapping. On December 7th, many days have passed since the beginning of the case, and Prosecutor Polis said that the possibility of offering a reward for those who could provide information about the whereabouts of the Pomars was being evaluated, and assured that they would continue to search for them without a time limit. In addition to all this, by this time a lot of places along the route had supposedly already been investigated. Several police officers had signed off on having searched in different sectors and not having found the Pomar's car in any of them. Because let's say one of the first things that was thought was that it had been an accident. And it turns out that by this time the police indicated that no, since the car had not been seen anywhere on the route. On December 8th, on the side of Route 31, near the city of Salto, among shrubs and trees, a Fiat Duna Weekend vehicle is found. Of red color. The vehicle had been found overturned and 4 bodies. 24 days had passed since the disappearance of the Pomars, and their description was exactly as the bodies had been found, including the car. So shortly after it was confirmed that it was indeed them. On December 9th, after the completion of the autopsies on the bodies found, it is presumed that they could have remained alive for a few hours after the accident. At least Gabriela, due to the type of injuries she had. Meaning that the family had died and Gabriela had been left dragging on for a few hours. There were many theories, many hypotheses about this case as it was unfolding. Let's say that the fact that they disappeared was not particularly what caught the attention, but rather the photos at the toll booth, the rumors, and the fact that the police said that in this very place where they had been found, they had already searched. An initial hypothesis involved a supposed chemistry degree that Fernando had, which in reality was nothing more than the specialty he had chosen in high school. This detail about his work made those who were following the case think of some relation to making and selling drugs. Maybe something went wrong so they had to escape. Again, this was not fully achievable. His title was secondary, not particularly so complex as to do this. Gabriela's mother tells a newspaper then, at this moment, the following. I didn't know he was a chemical technician. His title has been stuck in my head since last night. Suddenly I think, well, it could have been a kidnapping because of all the strange things happening with ephedrine, that they took him and are threatening his family. With all that was happening with ephedrine, she was referring to a case from the previous year. She was referring to the triple murder in General Rodriguez, which was linked to the trafficking of ephedrine. If it had been a kidnapping related to this issue, there was something strange about it. There were no reports of anyone asking for a ransom. The next theory suggested that perhaps there was some debt involved. Maybe they were escaping with the whole family to leave behind those who were looking for them. So, to test this, the investigators analyzed their bank accounts. It could be that, overwhelmed by debts, Fernando Pomar had decided to flee the country with his family. But their accounts, at least the visible ones, were still in order. They had money from a settlement, and their mortgage was up to date. It didn't seem like they really had money problems. The hypothesis of voluntary flight also began to erode because the woman's and daughter's documents had been left at home. Immigration also reported no records of them at the borders. Could they have been so threatened by those who were pursuing them that they ended up leaving through an illegal crossing? The truth is, it didn't seem like it. Even this rumor came out, which I mentioned a little earlier, that Fernando Pomar had bought a weapon due to insecurity, and that perhaps he had killed his family with it. If this allegation that he had a weapon was real, where was it? Had he perhaps taken it to kill his family? Some viewers thought this as they watched the case on TV. Then the issue came up that there might have been a conflict in the couple. Perhaps along the way, something happened that provoked Fernando to kill his family and himself with them. It could have been with the gun, just as it could have been by accelerating and driving the car off a cliff. Maybe he fled to some faraway place where he killed them and then killed himself. But the last part made no sense. They searched for them and the car but couldn't find them. And again, I emphasize that this vehicle was red, meaning that from aerial views, something like that could be noticed. After more than 20 days without finding them, the less credible hypothesis came. Perhaps they had been victims of a cult or captured by an unidentified flying object. However, as I already said, they were found in a place on the route, dead with the car crashed and broken among the grass. But despite the fact that for many the case had already been solved, in the sense that they had already been found, and that for many this was a national embarrassment and nothing more, that is that the police had done a poor job, for others this was not so simple. They believed that perhaps this was a cover-up, not an accident, and that they had not simply crashed with the car. Let's see why it is believed that this was not a simple family accident. First, the location of the discovery. Where they found them is not a common fort but a ditch that is 3 meters high by 2 meters deep. Therefore, it's challenging for a slow, loaded car like this one to have passed through there, as claimed. At this curve, vehicles leave the road to the left, and in this case, they veered to the right. A striking change, but it raises questions about the accumulated water and the cause of death. On Friday, November 13th, it rained heavily and continued raining on Saturday the 14th. The place is a well with a drop of more than 2 meters, as I said before, and a lot of water must have accumulated between 40 and 50 centimeters in height. If these people who were inside the car were thrown out of the vehicle and immediately became unconscious, they must have drowned. On the other hand, if it jumped the ditch, why weren't the tires deformed and the hubcaps, which were plastic, not broken or out of place? In addition to this, the tires were not deflated, which would have been caused by the impact. The front axle, axle tip, and vehicle's ball joint were intact. If the accident happened the way they presented it, the vehicle should show these damages. And there are many inconsistencies regarding how they presented the car in footage and in photos. First and foremost, it was quite clean for having come out of a hole in the ground, especially if it had rained the previous days. Why was it so clean? Why was it taken out and destroyed but without many signs of mud or things that would have happened due to the weather and the days it had spent there? It also had no mud marks on the inside, which would definitely have happened. As I said before, the bodies had been ejected from the car by the supposed impulse, but they also had no mud. Again, we're talking about a place with grass, a place where it rained, a place where they were lying for 24 days and they had no mud. It's very unusual. On the other hand, the girls' bodies were quite decomposed. Sorry for the detail, but it's the reality. The girls' bodies were decomposed supposedly by animals, by insects. However, the bodies of the adults did not present at all a similar decomposition, something that should have happened in 24 days of nature since they were lying in the grass. It is also speculated with things that were reported, such as, for example, the speed of the vehicle, according to some people. Really, I don't know this from personal experience, nor can I verify it. That car should not have been able to go more than 100 kilometers per hour, which was the speed at which it was reported that the accident had occurred. It's impossible for it to have been going at that speed due to the characteristics of the vehicle and the accident. First of all, the vehicle was diesel, it was also raining at that moment, it was night, and the condition of the road was not very good to say the least. Really, because of these factors, it is believed that the car should have been going 70 kilometers per hour and not 100, as had been reported, and that the accident should have happened differently. On the other hand, the sweep and aerial view. It is assumed that they checked this exact place with a helicopter and not... It was found. We're talking about a red car that would stand out among the grass. And on the other hand, there was also the ground search, the one that the police supposedly did and signed off on. So there were only two possibilities: that these police officers who were supposed to do the search didn't do it, or that the car wasn't there during that period from when they disappeared until the 24th. It is also speculated that the car had not left a mark in the mud that would be visible from the helicopter and also from the road. And even worse, we have how the bodies were found. Apart from the decomposition, there are the fractures. Fernando had a skull fracture. How did he get it? They had fallen on the grass, and in a way that it wouldn't have been entirely possible. There was no hair or bloodstains in the car or on any stone. And in the expertise, they should have reported this. But it was not done. And as a last point, I also want to say that the cell phones stopped working by magic. A complete report of the calls was not requested or anything like that. The antennas were not investigated, they did not connect. They saw that in several cases we can put together a whole timeline with places because the phones connect to antennas in different areas, and in this case it was not like that. Not only did the phones not do this, but the calls were also not requested to try to see if there was anything strange with the family, which I find quite strange. That is, why would the cell phones disconnect out of nowhere? It doesn't make sense, unless someone wanted to hide where they were. In addition to what I mentioned, there was a form of resolution to the case. As you saw earlier, there was quite a bit of police incompetence. Supposedly, if it wasn't a cover-up. And this is why in 2007, a trial was initiated against those who had claimed to do the search. There were 3 policemen: Daniel Fabian Arubito, Luis Angel Quiroga, and Benito Faustino Barcos. They were accused of ideological falsehood. They were the ones who made the record in which it was stated that they had searched the area where the Pomars were found and that they had found absolutely nothing. Former Lieutenant Benito Barcos was acquitted at that time. However, in 2018, the 2 policemen who had been convicted, Robito and Quiroga, were acquitted, so there were no responsible parties left in the case. That is, the case was not left unresolved but rather as an accident. But there are still many things that can't be explained, like why it took so long to discover the car. Beyond the fact that these 2 police officers lied. In fact, a witness claimed to have seen the car from a bus passing through the area. He was on the 2nd floor and could see the red vehicle in the grass, so he called 911. They took his information and nothing happened. It didn't go any further from there. And this is a very important fact, because why wouldn't they take his report? They told him they were taking it, but actually did nothing. Why wouldn't they take a report from a person who is talking about a very well-known case at that time? That is, the whole family was being searched for, their faces were all over the media. It's quite strange that it was ignored just like that. So, there are only 2 main hypotheses left, of which I've already spoken a little. The first is that it was obviously an accident. The case is already resolved, and it was simply a bit of police incompetence, which is indeed a national embarrassment. But the second hypothesis is that it was a cover-up. That is, it was an accident, but there were people trying to hide it. And to talk about this, we mainly base ourselves on the mark on the side of the car. That white mark I mentioned before. It was like a line that could mean that another car at high speed collided with this one, causing the impact that would kill the family. The question is what this car was. Well, it is theorized that it was a patrol car, that is, a police car. So it would be like the patrol car hits the Pomars, the police get out, see them dead, and create this scene where it all looks like an accident. So the next 24 days of the case are spent gathering evidence, cleaning absolutely everything, and leaving the scene as if it were nothing more than a provoked accident. Solely by the Pomars. Those are the 2 main hypotheses. You can tell me what you believe? This concludes the case. If you support any specific hypothesis or theory, please share it in the comments below. Know that I will be reading them and giving hearts. Here on the side are my patrons. If you want to know more about it, go to the page that is below in the description. If you have more cases, please leave them in the comments. I always read them and note those that ask me more. Behind is my cat in a box, in case you wanted to see her. There she is. And that's all for today. I hope you liked it. Here is a new video that has a recommended video. You can subscribe by clicking on my face and see you in another video.